I read a lot and I listen to a lot. And because I have other things to do, I don't really have the time to invest in getting too technical with the language and being able to explain it myself. So what I tend to do is, I wake up every morning, I read your posts, I follow a lot of other people. I'm always listening to things while I work with my hands. So I just take a lot of information in, let it sit in my brain for a while, and just try and spit out the point. Yeah. What's the actual point, you know? Mm-hmm. And so take something like communism. What's the actual point? It's care-based morality taken to an extreme. Would you agree with that framing?
Yes. That's not what I would say that it's really about. It's about reducing differences between peoples, so that more people feel harmonious with one another. But yes.
Also, like equalization of status.
It's about equalization. Yes, exactly.
Of relative status.
Right, and equalization of status and consumption. So because some people are extremely sensitive to that, because they've not been trained not to be. But some people are very sensitive to it.
Sure. So if you look at it through the lens of like Haidt's moral foundations, the care-harm spectrum plays very heavily into that. Correct?
Correct. I mean,
correct.
If you want the male ultimate, it's an army, and the female ultimate, it's communism, and those are the two ends of the spectrum we work with, and in the middle is the balance.
Yeah,
we either call democracy or libertarianism, depending on how you want, or liberty, whichever you want to talk about.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, people will value liberty in more conservative libertarians, because isn't liberty that freedom to compete in dominance hierarchies that men depend on to create because for men, like their reproductive strategy is going to you want a difference in relative status.
Correct. It's the reason men want this is that they want they want a material. This is important. They want to be able to produce a material difference in status, not only among men because it's to their advantage, but because it whether women want to say it or not, it provides a reproductive advantage with females. So yeah, I mean, people just feel. They can't put these feelings into words. So just like I said, it's like the Greeks didn't have a color for blue is one of the humorous bits of history because they just view things as spectrums of green. And so which for obvious reasons, because the variations in colors of water. And so the same is once you can't talk about the color spectrum in the way we do in ancient Greek. Well, the same way we can't talk about human behavior, right? Because we didn't know the colors. We didn't know the color spectrum then, so we couldn't talk about it as frequency of the light at different temperatures, right? We couldn't talk about our own feelings. Well, but those are two similar feelings. The fact that we feel colors, and we feel status toward or longing towards or benefit to one. These are just feelings, and all what I try to do is I try to reduce any human experience to to words so that we can talk about it.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's good. So you're giving a language to people's intuitions.
Right, and so the point here, though, is that we naturally want to value many things. In other words, we can't so since we value things differently, in other words, the red is still red, and some of us see a slightly different color of red than others, and that's just true. But the way we talk about we look at the world, we can't disentangle value from it. So what I've tried to do, and what I think I've successfully done, is create a value neutral language for talking about these things.
Yeah.
So, and it works like in psychology. I advise a couple of psychiatrists, and like in psychology, Freudian psychology is built on guilt and shame and being wrong, but psychology in my work, is operational work, is just the rational pursuit of incentives given my knowledge and understanding and researches at the time.
Is that what you call acquisitionism?
Yeah, it's just acquisitionism is just how do I reduce human behavior to a set of basically physical necessities that we have because we're evolved animals, developed feelings for, right, to motivate us. And because if an ant creature can't reason, it doesn't need feelings. It just needs to be stimulated. But the minute you can think and choose, you need to have feelings to motivate you one way or the other, so that you don't start choosing badly. And so that's where these things come from. So again, I'm sorry to cut it down. So let's just beat the point here, which is that it's just a value. I'm using a value neutral language, and a lot of you and I and the people like us, we find the value neutral language, the explanatory power, very, very pleasant, right? We can use it. It's helpful to us, but it comes at the cost of value neutrality. And other people are so far on the other direction that they don't see value as even being possibly neutral. They see it as a fact rather than a preference.
So you what you're saying there is, can I just frame this in terms of another way? I got very heavily into libertarianism, and I started to come out of libertarianism when I realized, okay, I'm a pretty smart guy, I'm a pretty fit guy, I'm still a pretty young guy, I've got a lot going for me. So competition is in my interest, but what I felt at the time was that it was right. That was what was moral. So, but then when I came out of it, I started to realize that, listening to you, that cultural norms and societal technologies are what free markets and things depend on. So I became like a conservative libertarian, and then I kept going further that way. But when I really kind of let go of it, I started to have more empathy for the fact that maybe people, and not as a value judgment, but just as a fact that people don't have the same kind of IQ points that some other people do, and that
it's two. I want to just because this is a sensitive subject. IQ is IQ and conscientiousness aren't disentangleable in this terms of what we can achieve, and so you have to have both. And the other thing you have to have is agency. So it's three things, but you're right.
But what I was saying is that I landed on a philosophy or a worldview that suited my incentives and my strategy, and it felt moral to me.
That's right.
And so if somebody has different incentives and strategies of temperament and all these things, cognitive bias, they'll feel that communism's moral or capitalism's moral, and that we're all feeling this thing and it feels to us right and moral. But to boil it down to how I see the point with your work, Propertarianism, is that it's a step above that, saying that really we all feel these things, we all think they're moral, and if you want to facilitate cooperation and reduce conflict between people, you have to create reciprocity with them on the terms of what they value, because there's no objective reason why communism, capitalism, libertarianism, this religion, that religion, anyone's strategy is objectively moral. It's just that we're all, I mean, I just want to remember. You're seeing my face, and I say I want to remember to say, well, there's, but I don't want to interrupt your point. So because you're doing a better job than I do. Okay. So, well, this is what I think is, why I wanted to do this, because I think that I think I'm smart enough to understand you, but I think I'm smart. Like I'm not so smart that I can repeat it in your language, but I can boil it down to a point, and I think that if people are like me, that would be useful. So we're all running around feeling like our strategy and our politics, our worldview, or even our religions are moral. But propertarianism takes a step above that and says, if you want to facilitate cooperation, which is beneficial for a lot of people in most circumstances, then you need to create reciprocity between all these different strategies.
Yep.
You need to create win-win interactions between people's different values. And
That's
basically, people can value whatever the hell they want, and they do, and they will, and that's where it's at. There's nothing objective.
Right, you can't make them feel differently. And honestly, the way you feel is just like it was for you. It's your reproductive strategy, and you know what?
Yeah.
It needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're doing what you're best able to do.
Yeah.
That's why it feels.
You know,
and
you actually helped me a lot, because you made me feel happier about paying taxes. Because when I was a libertarian, I hated paying taxes because it felt evil and just wrong. And and to be honest, like, I think there are a lot of people like me who have a more disagreeable personality and slightly more conflict in family history and that sort of thing. And you said it once that people like me don't see the value in the status quo. And I think that it comes also from not feeling like society's that great to you. So to give back to society feels like you're just being exploited. But
that's why so many people right now feel that the world isn't working for them, because it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. And but I think from listening to you and reading your stuff, I basically came to the realization that, as Jordan Peterson also framed it, like, paying taxes is the price you pay for people to not come and kill you and take your stuff. That's actually pretty good. That's a pretty good deal.
No, that's what it's for, right?
That's what it's for.
We object to it being used for more than that. But part of it is, if you don't, the reason you don't want to have too many people at the bottom is you run out of ability to pay them not to come kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
And which is very, very applicative to the current present time. Is that we can't afford to pay the vast increase in the lower classes that we've reversed, and they're not happy about it.
Yeah. So I'd like to get to that, but I'd really like to just tie off just in the language that I feel is very clear. You know, that you said once, reciprocity.
I should just shut up and let you talk, because you're doing a better job than I am.
No. I'm asking you, but I'm asking for the information, but I'm hoping I'm framing it correctly.
You are.
Thanks. So you said once that reciprocity is just don't do things to people that they don't want you to do. It's the via negativa version of the golden rule. It's not a positive action, but don't do things to people they don't want you to do. And so
it's the silver rule. There's a golden rule and the silver rule.
Silver rule, yeah.
Golden rule is via positiva. Silver rule is via negativa.
Yeah. So I feel like it's a shout out to every political commentator who's moralizing about their particular strategies. You know, people can do whatever the fuck they want, and that's where it's at. And they're going to, and they can value whatever the fuck they want. So if you want to have a functioning society, you need to find enough compromise between these different strategies that you actually have an incentive for people to submit to the rule of law. You have some consistency, you have some harmony, so that we can all just get on with it. And that's what propertarianism is based on, is a reciprocity, just trying to keep people happy.
Can I add something or no?
Unless you don't have to. I mean, cooperation's beneficial until it's not, and if it's not, what power do you have?
There you go.
Yeah. If the incentive rises to do other things, then you can. Well, then you can. But if you can't, then it's playing politics. But that's the point, isn't it? That people can value whatever they want. Reciprocity is just trying to keep compromise between these values as much as possible.
Okay, I want to see if I can make my 3 points.
Sure.
Because as a via negativa, I'm always looking for where does this go to that's not right. First, it's it's reciprocity within the limits of proportionality, reciprocity within the limits of defection. So all of us are looking for reciprocity in exchange with others. That's the neutral position.
Yeah.
The truth is, many of us are looking to scam others, and we would like reciprocity from them and irreciprocity from ourselves.
Sure.
And this is the fundamental problem, because humans operate as immorally as they can get away with, not as morally as they can imagine.
Can I just clarify a term there? You say proportionality. Is that what people would call equality?
People who equality are inverting reciprocity and proportionality. So what they're saying is everything needs to be proportional, and the opposite of proportional is disproportional, which means only the best need to get something. Reciprocity produces a market where things are justly applied within some limits.
Sure.
The problem is our concept of justness. The fact that a symphony musician who's bringing joy to us doesn't make a lot of income doesn't seem moral to some people, whereas a footballer who makes a fortune seems immoral to some of us. So this is this is a misunderstanding. Reciprocity is basically the only human equal sign. It's the only way that you and I can interact where one of us doesn't get either hurt or angry or wish to retaliate.
Yep.
And it's this wishing to retaliate because of irreciprocities or for excessive disproportionalities that causes us to get angry with the status quo and want to do something about it.
Sure. So in real terms, back to like the communism redistribution versus free market thing, under communism, obviously there's lack of incentives. We all know those problems, but a lot of the right wingers, is it that the Pareto distribution of income and returns and things would create so much gap? Is that what you mean? Like out of the bounds of proportionality, is that if there's too much of a gap between what people have or their status or reproductive status, then they're going to get the shits?
Well, I mean, if they're trapped, they will, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so the issue is that we can't separate right now. There's no mechanism for us to separate. If you and I don't want to get along, we can separate. If a household doesn't get along, it's extremely costly and painful. We can separate. If we are working together and in different businesses and we don't want to do business with each other, we can separate.
Yeah.
The problem is that with the kind of governments we've put in place, there's no mechanism, as there has been in the past, to separate, and we can't get out of it. So so since we don't have the right of disassociation, we can't even say I don't want to serve you in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have the right of disassociation. We don't have the ability to say, okay, well, I'm going to defect. Well, if you can't defect, what is your only choice? It's conflict. Right? And so that's what we see.